Vítajte pri počúvaní a sledovaní ďalšieho podcastu Dnes. Mojím dnešným hosťom je Jakob Yanovsky, ktorý prevzal funkciu veľvyslanca na Slovensku v januári tohto roka. Vystriedal tak veľvyslanca Eitana Levona, ktorý tu pôsobil zhruba 4 roky. Dnes sa respektíve porozprávame o možnostiach spolupráce našich krajín, teda Slovenska a Izraela, ale aj o výzvach, ktoré vidí v našich diplomatických vzťahoch. So, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to this interview.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here.
Nice to meet you, and it's really pleasure for us. So, first question. You are a career diplomat with extensive experience in the Middle East and Asia. You also served in Tokyo. Was it your personal choice to come to Slovakia?
So, I would say that this is kind of a privilege that diplomats have. We can switch from areas of expertise or maybe focus from place to place. I started my career as an Asian guy because I studied Chinese and I lived in China before joining the ministry. So my first post was in China, in Chengdu, as a Chinese speaker. I thought I will focus on Asia, but you see it after a while that the ministry gives you the opportunity to diverse, to enjoy other places. And so after being in Asia for a few years, I was a manager of the cadet course, in the Israeli cadet course where you train new diplomats, and then had the opportunity to go to the Middle East division, which we had this department of the Gulf states, which was the most exciting department because back then we started the new relationship with the Gulf countries, with the UAE and Bahrain. Then October 7 happened, and it changed the entire focus. But then, this is what we have as a privilege. You can start to look at the world and to see what is more interesting and where you can go. And to be honest, Slovakia was kind of a luck that I could come here. It's very interesting because it's a country that we have a lot of things to do together. I think we will elaborate more in the next questions, but I was happy to come here because it's Europe. It's a place that you can. There is the relations between Israel and the entire European community or European Union and Slovakia is very interesting, and it's close to Israel, and we can build many things. There is no limit to what we can do together. So I'm very privileged to be here.
So, as you said, you are Asian guy. So I think it's like that you are polyglot. You can many languages, or also Asian languages. Or
I wouldn't say I broke my teeth trying to learn Chinese. It was very hard, and it took me a lot of energy and a lot of time. Actually, my wife, she's half Japanese, half Israeli, so she speaks Japanese at home with my son, and I do understand Japanese. It's very hard for me to speak, but so I wouldn't say that I speak many languages, especially when I meet people here in Slovakia, that you can speak many languages. People here, they speak, of course, Slovak, Czech, but many people speak German and Ukrainian, and of course, English is very common here. So I would be very careful to say that I speak many languages, yeah.
So now you have opportunity to learn Slovak language in Bratislava.
I hope so.
Maybe next time when we.
Wow, I wouldn't guarantee it's a very tough language, but of course I will try to.
Okay, so what makes Slovakia interesting to you, and where do you see opportunities to deepen cooperation between Slovakia and Israel?
So I think Slovakia and Israel have a lot in common. We are like-minded countries. There is no limit to what we can do together bilaterally. Slovakia is a small country that had the independence for the last 30-something years. Israel is a country, is a new, modern Israel I'm talking about. It's also a new country that built as a democracy. There is something, this is the similarities. I think that we see Slovakia, we have a good image of Slovakia in Israel, a country that sees us as a vital partner in the Middle East. We know that there is many things to do together. I think that Israel understands that Slovakia's physical location in Central Europe can be very valuable for Israeli businesses. I think that we have no concerns about doing things with Slovakia in any field, in defense, in cyber, all the things that Israel is leading with. So it's very exciting. There's so many opportunities to do here. There is no limit. You work, when you deal with diplomacy or international relations, it's sometimes very sensitive. There is many things that you need to put into consideration. With Slovakia, it's easier because of the understanding of what we represent as countries, the like-mindedness, the image, the good image, and the possibilities.
Okay. So a few days ago, you met with the Slovak Minister of Education, Mr. Drucker. The discussion focused on the use of innovation and artificial intelligence in the education process. Will this lead to any concrete cooperation?
I truly believe so. I think first, Mr. Drucker is very impressive with his views and how what he wants to achieve. I think Israel should be maybe a key partner for his projects or ideas. For example, we talked about how we can implement AI in the education systems to be a more responsible use of AI for teachers and for students. Because if you will ignore it, you will miss the opportunity. And if you will misuse it, then it will be a tool of destruction instead of a tool of education. So he's very much aware of it. He's very, very sharp. He's very much knowledgeable on that. And I think Israel can be a key partner for that because of our ecosystem. Another thing that I think will be very interesting is Israel can offer a lot of things with emergency preparedness in schools. We have a special model for education for the gifted kids. This is something that we are proud of. How to identify gifted kids with special talents or high IQ and how to treat them, because sometimes they get lost because they are not always suitable for regular systems. So we have a lot of things to do together. And I truly, after this short meeting that I had with him, we look like he is the right guy to do this cooperation with Israel, and we have a lot to offer. So I truly believe that it will bring many things of cooperation between our countries. Of course, we need to have the right time to start it, but it will come soon.
Yeah, I think that really we have long-term challenges in the education, in Slovak universities, but also high schools, etc., and even primary schools. So I think there is really place to more grown up.
Speaking about universities, for example, you just mentioned, there is also a lot of possibilities and potential between universities, because Israel is one of the leading countries outside of the European Union in terms of innovation, and our universities are top in the world.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of politicization of in universities around the world, and I think that in Slovakia can be a very good place for us to invest and to have more cooperation in higher education. So I'm also optimistic on this field. Yeah,
I just add to that also in science, Israel is really interesting, and Israel, I think, in my point of view, is something like second Silicon Valley.
Yes, you have more IT companies per capita in the world. Maybe if you compare it only to the Silicon Valley, it's very much deeply rooted in our in our character or psychology. It's very much the Israeli way, but we are very open. It's a small market, and we are always looking for partners, but we need to find the right partners. And I think there is an understanding in Israel that Slovakia can be a right partner, because there is talents in Slovakia. People are smart here, you are educated, the language is not a barrier, but also the location of Slovakia in Central Europe. Of course, it's a small country, Slovakia, but the reach is very big, and I think Israeli companies can gain a lot from thinking about Slovakia.
So, next question is a little bit about our dark side of history. So, I assume you are familiar with our dark history during World War II. The Slovak state, led by President Tiso, was responsible for the tragic fate of Jewish people. At the same time, even after the war, further pogroms and attacks against Jews took place in Slovakia. So how did you personally process this reality before coming to Slovakia? Because when you introduce you, it was all very positive. So how look at this?
There is also a positive way to look at this. Of course, this is a shared history. This is something that we have to always remember, that this is something that should be talked about and should be dealt with. Next week, for example, there is an event in Poprad. 25th of March was the deportation of the first deportation to Auschwitz. So, and there is a lot of things being done with good people here from the Jewish community, people from the government. There is this the Jewish Museum here. There is the Holocaust Memorial site in Serech. So there is things being done. It's not enough. You ask me, I'm going back to the first question about what I see as why to come to Slovakia. I think probably many people know from my last name that I'm originally, my family comes from Eastern Europe. My family was Polish, and for my father's side, they were Auschwitz survivors. So this is also a personal, maybe a journey of myself to be here. And for me, it's very important to. It's not a matter of pointing fingers or blaming anyone. I think just to make sure that these things will not occur, will not happen again. And this is the responsibility of the Slovak government and the education. And I think people understand it here. If there is enough things being done, that's a question of being, you need to understand more. But there is a lot of awareness. Now I have to say that I'm happy to see that there is a lot of awareness and that people are talking about it. And this question is an example for being, discussed and being addressed, because it's not always like this. But we live in dangerous days, in dangerous times for maybe two main reasons. One reason is that today it's 81 years since the end of the Second World War. The living evidence are disappearing. People are dying. You don't have any more Holocaust survivors. It's a generation that is going. And it will be harder to explain, or maybe it will be easier to deny. It will be easier for people to deny when you don't have live evidence, and I'm worried about it. Second is that anti-Semitism is growing back. It becomes in fashion. We see it in many places. It's people feel much more comfortable to be anti-Semitic in public, or maybe more vocal about anti-Semitism, and it's also something that we need to be worried about, because history is a lesson that we need to learn from. So I think Slovakia should be leading in that because of your personal stories, because what happened in this country, because of the dark history, as you mentioned. You need to lead the way today of saying that will never happen again, like we do as Israel.
Okay, like you said, the anti-Semitism is really strong nowadays. But also Israel has increasingly becoming the target of criticism from European politicians. How do you perceive this?
So first, for the first part, I think there is some linkage, of course, between anti-Zionism or anti-Israel to anti-Semitism.
You think there is there are two different things?
I think if you're a hardcore anti-Semitic person, then you are anti-Israeli. Or if you are anti-Israeli, that will bring you to a very, it's a very easy connection to do, to say, okay, I'm against Israel, I'm opposing what Israel is doing, so let's be against Jews, which is a very simplified way to so yeah, I'm afraid of it. I think that not enough is being done around the world. Lately, we see more. I think just last week, or even beginning of this week, we had shooting on a synagogue in the Netherlands. A few days ago, also in Belgium. We see it all over. If you're opposing Israel, then your target will be the Jewish community. And this is something that is repeating, okay?
Yeah.
So I would say that it's worrying. Regarding the European criticizing Israel, we are not against criticizing. You can criticize us. We are a country that can accept criticism. We are a democracy. We are accepting various opinions, and we are a nation among nations. May I criticize Slovakia? May I criticize the Netherlands? I can.
Yeah.
I accept it. The question is if it's something that brings any benefits. If you are talking about your contribution to the Middle East, I think the European contribution to the Middle East is very, very low.
Yeah.
And it's not being done correctly. Instead of just saying statements on condemning or saying how much they are worried about, they are not doing enough to show that there is a real problem and that Israel is dealing with a real problem, especially about Israel's security. So that's the point. The point is that, okay, bring on your criticism. We can talk about it. But if you're really worried, if you're obsessed about the Middle East, because there is an obsession. Every time that the European ministers are meeting once a month, they're talking about Ukraine, which is a war going on in the European continent, and about the Israel-Palestinian conflict, which is one of other many conflicts going on in the world today. So there is an obsession going on in Europe. Okay, but what are your real contribution on bringing this situation or making Israel safer or, stopping the wars in the Middle East? Not much. Small talks, then real actions. So that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, I think I just must admit with you, because I also think that globally the medias are really obsessed about Gaza and this type of crisis. But other many things about Middle East are something like too much far away. But when we talk about Gaza, there are many experts.
Yeah, so it's an obsession. I don't know where it comes from. And we can talk about psychology or about, but it's a different story. But I have to say, I'll give you an example. One thing that when you're talking about the international law and stuff like that, okay, it's a question, or it's something that can be discussed, but it cannot be discussed without a context. It cannot be discussed without understanding why Israel is being threatened, or why we have existential threats going on. You cannot discuss this kind of why Israel is behaving the way we behave without understanding what happened in October 7, or without understanding what's the security situation of Israel today. So this is something that is not being done in a full context, and it's not being done with trying to bring something to solve the situation, or to help with the situation.
And just for remember that Israel is from the absolute beginning or has many threats from outside. So I think people also for this every time forget. So even some Slovak members of Parliament, European Parliament, have adopted the narrative that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. It's a really popular narrative in every field, even in education or universities. There are many things or ideas like this. Can this claim be successfully refuted?
I would say that whoever thinks that Israel is committing a genocide is shallow understanding of the situation. It's a very shallow understanding. Second is misusing the term genocide, and it's something wrongdoing for genocides that have been done in the world. I think that you don't understand what's going on in the Middle East completely, and it's part of the kind of new the fashion in the world to get your news from the social media, to be a victim of fake news, to not dive deep to understand the situation. Israel not only is not committing a genocide, Israel is stopping a genocide on our own people, which is the other second crime. It's not only that we've been attacked in October 7 and that we are protecting ourselves, and there is a lot of things that we've been done in our army to stop civilians being attacked or being hurt. And of course, it's hard when you deal with this enemy and when they are hiding behind the civilian population. But the second crime is that they are managing to bring this narrative of a genocide because it's the complete opposite. Yeah. And it's to be honest, it's very, very annoying. It's very annoying that people are saying this. This is a genocide should be done with an intention to do genocide, and this is something that the Hamas is doing, and this is something that Iran wants to do, and Israel is just trying to protect itself. Of course, we are strong. We have a strong army, and there's a lot of casualties. We can talk about, measures to stop it, but look at the details. Look at what's going on. Look what Israel is trying to do. So just saying the word genocide on the Israeli, it's very shallow, and it's completely wrongdoing for the term genocide and for the reality in the Middle East today.
Let's go back to Bratislava. You have only recently arrived in Slovakia, but what are your first impressions, and what do you like most here, and maybe what has been the most unusual for you?
I feel very welcomed here. Me and my family are very much, we feel very, very at home. It's a very nice city. We call it, it's a town because it's very small, but it's very comfortable. Now the weather is good, right? It's also, so as I said in the beginning, we have this like-mindedness between the countries. It's very comfortable to speak. When you meet, I'm not talking about people that they have criticizing about Israel, and maybe many of them never met Israel in their life or comes from other, understanding, but it's very easy to communicate between Slovaks and Israelis. We have, there's some mentality that you can connect to. We feel very comfortable in this city. I feel like there is, as I said, there is no boundaries of what we can do as countries together. Of course, now it's Israel is fighting for our own security, but once the time will come, there is a lot of things to do together. So I enjoy this place. There is a reason why Slovakia is very wanted in the diplomatic. Many people want to come here to be diplomats from Israel because it's very comfortable and it's very livable, and it's evolving also, I think. People that were here 15, 20 years ago, they see a different Bratislava today. So it's a very comfortable city to live in, and we are very happy here.
And you are close or keep in touch with Slovak Jewish community? Maybe some
I think
examples.
I think that there is a small Jewish community in Slovakia, at least organized. I think there are few, like 2,000 to 3,000 people, something like that. And I think that they are doing a wonderful job in keeping the Jewish memory of this country. I think that the Jewish memory of Slovakia is a part of Slovakia's identity, right? People here were the Jews of this country were a big part of this community, and the Jewish community is doing a great job to make sure that this is something that is still part of Slovakia today. I think that they are they are working very hard in maintaining a Jewish memory of this country. They are great partners of us as an embassy. We are working with them very closely, and I'm very appreciative to the partnership we are building together. So they are amazing. They are doing great.
Okay. Could you describe, using a SWOT analysis, what you see and as the strengths and weaknesses of current Slovak-Israeli relations, as well as the opportunities and threats for the future? Maybe if you can explain and your vision.
So going back to saying that there is a lot of understanding of as a like-minded countries, we are democracies. There is no limitations of what we can do together. More than that, maybe to go to another layer, we see Slovakia as a country that is not politicizing maybe professional cooperation within Israel and Slovakia. Meaning that if we can do things in science, in technology, in education, we can do it regardless of the political situation, which is very important. I think that Slovakia's, for two reasons, can be very, very appealing for Israel, or maybe even more than two. But main two is, of course, the physical location of Slovak geographical location. It can be a gate for entire Europe. But also I think that there is a lot of talents here. And it's evolving also with people here speak English, people here are very highly educated. We can do many things together as for Israeli companies to come to Slovakia. I think will be a very smart move. Weaknesses, I would say that, as it's entire European situation of, if you put this obsession about the conflict aside, then it's easier to do business or to do things together. So you need to remember that. I would say that in Slovakia it's not as it's not in the center as it is with other European Western countries. I would say that Slovakia is more opening to the world now. The foreign ministry of Slovakia is trying to be more in the Middle East, understand a bit more, and it's also a good thing. I think if I would say that a few opportunities, we are focusing, we are trying to identify us as an embassy what will be the main topics of main areas to focus on in the cooperation between Slovakia and Israel. And I would say that we are thinking about health tech. I think there is a lot of things that we can do together in health, talking about how to implement new technologies in health, talking about digitalization of the health system, emergency preparedness. We are fortunately or unfortunately, we are world leaders in emergency preparedness. So this is something that also in the health tech. Energy security. Israel is leading in finding energy, green energy solutions, and also security of energy of critical infrastructure. For example, when you talk about cybersecurity, when you talk about physical security of critical infrastructure, this is something that we have a lot to offer and we can do things together. And maybe in the automobile industry, Slovakia is a leading force in that. And we, of course, we don't produce cars in Israel, but we do produce a lot of, the industry is very, very vast in connection to the automobile industry, and there is a lot of things to do together. Agriculture is another field, so there is a lot of opportunities to do together. And smart people in Slovakia are identifying that and seeing Israel as a vital partner for Slovakia. Because Israel is doing good. We have a lot to offer in that field.
Okay, now we can take a fly to Middle East. In the summer of 2025, the action against Iran was described as a 12-day war. How do you assess the current situation with Iran today?
So in June, we had this 12-day war when we thought that the Iranian regime learned the lesson, and apparently they didn't. And since June, if you see a graph, we thought that that their nuclear weapons program had stopped, but they moved even more rapidly to reach to their maybe goal of having a nuclear weapon. And also they thought about maybe hiding it deep down underground so it will not be reached by Israel or by the US. And it came to understanding from our side that it's an imminent, meaning immediate, and also existential threat. Existential threat is something that is very hard to explain to countries around the world today, because what other countries have an existential threat? They are not just saying that they are protecting themselves or something. This is their clear ideology since the beginning of this regime. They are just saying that they cannot live with Israel and death to America, death to Israel. And it's not just slogans. They are working for it. And it was their number one strategy, not to to bring prosperity to their people or welfare or to be an accepted nation, just to find ways to destroy the state of Israel. And we tried to deal with it for many years, but it came to a point that not taking action was more dangerous than taking the action. It was an immediate, imminent, and existential threat that we had to deal with. Sometimes, and it's also very hard to explain to people in the world, and especially Europe today, that sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to deal with, if you are dealing with a radical, fanatic, murderous regime, and don't look at us, they are killing their own people.
Yes, I think it was in the streets murdered 50,000 people.
You don't even know the numbers. It's between 30 to 50,000 people. They closed the internet back then, and they close it now again. And I think they are closing the internet not just because they are afraid the world will know, because their own population is very connected, and they are trying to stop their own population from reaching out to the world or understanding what's going on in the world today. We are living in 2026, and Iranian people are being oppressed in a level that it's, it's very sad. Today is the Nowruz, by the way. It's the Iranian New Year, the Persian. And so, it's one of the reasons, to help the Iranian people to take back what it's theirs. But for us, it was just dealing with this threat. So there is no choice. I don't think that the Iranian regime is learning the lesson. I think that they are trying to, for them, they don't have any reasons for, maybe reasons to keep this regime except having, the brutality against their own people, and also we having a common enemy, which is Israel and the US. But it's not acceptable with their own people. The numbers of supporters, or maybe how many of the Iranian people are against this regime. The numbers are saying between 80 to 95% of the people are against this regime. They don't have the support, or they are not legitimate by their own people. And for years, we were saying that the Iranian regime is not just a threat for Israel, it's a threat for the Middle East, and it's been proven by their attacks on their neighbors that they have diplomatic relations with. The neighbors that thought that having Iran connected or having diplomatic relations with Iran will help them to avoid a physical threat from Iran, which is proven to be wrong. So they are threatening their own neighbors, but they are also a threat to Europe. We saw that they aimed at Turkey, they aimed at Cyprus. So it's more than a threat to Israel. We are maybe in the front line, or maybe just doing the hard work, but this is something that it's been a threat for the entire region. I think the stability of the Middle East will be much more stable without this regime. By the way, there is 3 reasons we see it as an existential threat to Israel. Of course, the main reason is this nuclear threat, that they moved very fast to achieve their aspiration of a nuclear weapon. But second is their ballistic missile program. They have missiles that can reach to Central Europe. I know it's very hard to
I think even to Slovakia.
Even to not just think, for sure. and sorry, I know it's very hard for Slovaks to hear it, and it's but this is the reality. And second and third, I would say that their strategy of choking Israel with terror organizations like Hezbollah, like Hamas. October 7th will not happen. It will not happen without the approval, or maybe the guidance, maybe the training of the Iranians. They are behind all this malign behavior that's going on today in the Middle East. So
maybe just in your point of view, do you think that Iran can transform to true, really democratic regime?
So it's, I have to be honest that we are not in the business of changing the regime. It's not our, they need to do it themselves. It need to come back to their own people. Iran, unlike Iraq or other, stories, people are, comparing what will happen with Iran, like saying that it will be a failed state like Iraq after the 2003. There is a big difference. And the difference is, according to what you say, there is a very strong, secular, educated society in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Iran in 1979 were 35 million people, and now they are close to 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
They are almost triple their size since the revolution. So the majority of the population there is, they are young. Many of them are pro-Western. Many of them are secular. Many of them want freedom. Second, I would say that they have an history of self-governing. It's not a country, if you look at the map in the Middle East, it's not a country that was, drafted by European diplomats in the beginning of the 20th century. It's a real country. It's the Persian civilization. Yeah. It's a very rich civilization that contributed a lot to the world in the past. They have their own pride. So I believe in the Iranian people. I do believe that they can take back take back their country to become a wonderful country as it used to be in the long past, and they can be a great contribution to the Middle East. And this is something that we should be optimistic for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's a really sad example, but also when you think about it, that Iran can take or can even have some ballistic missiles which can reach Europe, Central Europe, etc. So I think that people must be smart, basically. But it's for discussion that this regime, if it's really the good choice for these people.
Obviously, it's not, and not only that. Tyrants or dictators, they fail.
Yeah.
The question is how much time. The example, the world example today that we should avoid is the North Korean example. It's been around since the 1950s, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have nuclear weapon. This is why it's very hard to deal with them. They are a threat to their region, to Japan, to China. And to Korea, South Korea. And because they have nuclear weapons, it's very hard to deal with this regime. And the main victims are their own people. If Iran would reach a nuclear weapon, it would be another case of North Korea. But not only that they are a case of North Korea, they are also a radical, fanatic, religious regime that believes in hegemony in the Middle East. So this is something that cannot be accepted. So with this regime, we don't believe there will be any good future for their own people. And I think their own people understand it also. We see around the world there is a lot of pro-Israeli, pro-American demonstrations by Iranian exile. And it's funny when you see sometimes, I'm sorry for using this language, but idiots around the internet that they are criticizing what's going on today, then the first response they get in social media is from Iranians themselves saying, what do you know about what's going on? This is something that we are hoping to have. So, we should be optimistic that this is the right time. It's a moment in history that maybe they can take back this country to become a major stabilizer or a contributor, a nation among nations, a country that contributes to the region, to the world. And it's a major country. It's not, it's something that can be great. Yeah.
Maybe just one question for this with context to Iran. Why are so big support for people in Gaza, or maybe even for Hamas and all about it? And when European people see murdered people, Iranian people, in the streets. They are not so big hush or screaming about it.
I think, this is a very good question that it's very hard to explain, because first I would say that if you are saying that you are a humanist, a liberal that is worried about what's going on in Gaza, and you have nothing to say about Iran, then you lost credibility, right? That's number one. Okay. Then for sure you have anti-Israeli obsession. That's the only thing that motivates you.
Yes, it looks like this.
That's what motivates you. It's not about the real concern about what's going on. It's anti-Israeli motivation. I would say also that it became a trend or a fashion, and this is something that we as Israel need to deal with. It's kind of a politics of identity. Mm-hmm. Many people, young people around the liberal world are identifying themselves with liberal ideas or liberal values, and they think that Israel-Palestinian conflict is part of this. You need to be in one side. You don't have critical thinking. You don't think for yourself. You don't try to understand what's going on, or maybe to look at the world in a broader look. And having this obsession also in Europe, it only motivates this kind of like very shallow understanding of the situation. So I would say that, it's a very good question. It's a very annoying question for us. We need to deal with it. We need to understand how we, maybe for us as Israel, we make people to think for themselves. I don't need you to be a pro-Israeli. I need you to understand the situation and to be honest with yourself, and to have a critical thinking of what's going on. It's not about being pro this or pro that. It's about being honest with yourself. If tomorrow will be a conflict in some place, think about it, and don't just choose sides because this is what your friends are doing, or this is something that you see on social media.
Basically on the emotional videos or pictures, etc.
Or anti-Semitic values.
Okay. Finally, do you think it is possible to effectively counter or fight against anti-Semitic propaganda and anti-Zionist narratives? Because I think you really could see what looks like in Europe and globally, I think.
Yeah. I think that there is a few layers of this question. First, anti-Semitic values in place like Slovakia should be taken care of from the Slovak government or from your own community, because this is a lesson from your history that you need to deal with. The connection between anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and anti-Israeli values, it's very hard to deal with, because today we live in time of fake news, of shallow understanding of situations. We talked about it, and we as Israel, we are trying to deal with it by being very honest of what's going on and trying to bring the reality as we understand and we see it. And sometimes it's more deep and more hard to grasp and hard to understand. It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. It's not. We're not in the same level of. When we deal with fake news or when we deal with anti-Israeli propaganda, and it's very emotional also. It's very emotional. But I do believe that maybe it's more than we see. I don't know if there's so many anti-Israeli people as we think when we see in the social media. Sometimes one person makes noise, it looks like there is many supporters. I think that many people understand and will understand in the future the contributions that Israel is doing to the world in soft power, in our. We are a country that I'm proud of my country because we have a lot to offer in many things, in agriculture, in technology, in science, innovation, in health tech. We are leading force in many of these things, and we are doing it in a very hard reality. Countries that understand what we can achieve, they want to work with us, and they understand how good Israel is bringing to the world. There's always some kind of like do a a very simple test to yourself. If you are so much against Israel, then boycott everything from Israel, or every technology, or everything in your life that has a source from Israel. It will be very hard for you to live as a modern person today in the world.
People really like to be selective. So
yeah, but in the end, it will come back to the understanding of what this country is contributing to the world, and I think that this is especially when the Middle East will be more stable. When I was working with the Gulf states, countries that we didn't have any relations with, and we built these relations in 2020, which I think was the major diplomatic achievement of the 21st century for sure. And we built a peace that was the foundation was what we can achieve together as countries that want to bring something good to the world. And this was very, very, very strong foundation that still brings our countries together. So this is something that we just need to keep working on what we believe in, and just keep doing good to the world. And we believe in what we are in our and of course if you doubt that Israel should have a right to exist, then okay, that's your obsession. It's not something I'm not trying to explain myself to you. Do you have any question of why Slovakia has the right to exist, or why other countries has the right to exist? This is very shallow. So.
Finally, Jakob, can you say or write some message in the battle, positive message for Slovak audience?
Yeah, I think there is good days will come soon. I think we need to be optimistic, and Israelis are optimistic in nature. We have to be optimistic, because otherwise we cannot build this wonderful country that is built under this threat from the beginning of our establishment. I think that a lot of Israelis wants to travel to Slovakia. They understand the beauty of this country. And I think that soon also we'll have more opportunities to also visit the Middle East, for Slovaks to visit Israel. So I'm very optimistic about what's going on. I hope that this obsession about Israel will finish. It will ease down a bit, and good things will come.
Okay. Now just really, really, really big thank you for you and for this interview. And I hope that we could meet again. So really nice to meet you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. Enjoyed it. Thank you.